Hugh in Studio West out in California this morning. Hope you're having a good one. Let me begin by saying it's early in the year to declare a Dumbest Statement Award. It's only January 6th. So that leaves us, 11 months and 25 days for people to say stupid things. But Sonny Hostin, infamously of The View, a program that I've never watched, but which I've sadly seen clips, went big yesterday. She went big. She wants the gold for dumbest statement in 2025. There was other news yesterday. Big earthquake in China and Tibet. 6.8 by the statements of the People's Communist Earthquake Society. Our U.S. Geological Society says it's 7.1. It's big. It's bad. Classic Chinese construction. Where's the rebar? And D.C. is indeed blanketed with snow, even as the New York State judges are being covered in shame, all of them, by Juan Merchan, the, quote, air quote here, judge. He's an acting judge. He has embarrassed himself from start to finish in the Trump proceeding, and never more so yesterday than when he declared he's going to sentence Donald Trump this week on the 10th. The president-elect's lawyers are doing their best to point out to appeals court he really has no authority to do this. He really did make an enormous number of errors. We know that Donald Trump has not been rightly judged. It was unfair from the beginning. And all he's trying to do is earn the praise of his left-wing nutter friends in Manhattan. And that's fine. It won't matter if Donald Trump is sentenced to him to pay a fine. It will eventually be reversed on appeal. The Trump lawyers have also asked Merrick Garland to stop crazy Jack Smith, and I do think the guy is over the edge. Arjaver, from publishing a report because it could just be in crayon, I'm not sure. Everything that Jack Smith has tried blew up in his hands because he really does have a little megalomania issue going on. Let him go run for something, but that's all beside the point. Sonny Hostin, look, I don't know Sonny Hostin. I don't know her from Adam. I'm sure she's perfectly nice. But if you're going to be dumb, don't be dumb on national television. Cut number 10, Sonny Hostin yesterday.
I think we need to find moral clarity, in this country. And I just remember after January 6th, you had someone like Mitch McConnell placing the blame on January 6th where it belonged, squarely on Donald Trump's shoulders. Mm-hmm. And then you started seeing people backtrack that and losing their moral center. You had Condoleezza Rice, I believe, on this very show saying, we need to move on from January 6th. I say no. You don't move on because January 6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, like World War II, things that happened, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery, we need to never forget because past becomes prologue if you forget any race.
All right, now, where I could begin on this, there are so many options on the menu. She cited January 6th, the riot at the Capitol, bad day. Everyone who did any illegal act there needs to and has been prosecuted. Some of them have been over-sentenced. Many will have their sentences commuted. Some will be pardoned by Donald Trump on January 21st. But to compare it in any way, she didn't even mention 9/11. Sonny forgets 9/11. To the Holocaust, World War II, and slavery tells us nothing about January 6th and everything about Sonny Hostin. She's also rocking the dating game sweater. Now, some of you are not old enough to remember the dating game. All right, you had to have been in elementary school in the 60s and get home from school and turn on either Gilligan's Island or the dating game. And the dating game had good music. If I had a producer, I would have the dating game music at this point. But if you cannot see, you should turn on the Salem News Channel just to see the dating game sweater that she's rocking. Generalissimo, do you see that sweater? Have you ever seen a sweater like that before?
Yeah, it is. It is definitely 70s. It's dating game, newlywed game material.
Yeah, well, the dating game had a set, which was just done in the panels of hideous oranges, yellows, and browns. It looked.
You know what it was? Is let's make a deal. It's a let's make a deal sweater.
No, it is a definite dating game sweater. You probably didn't watch the dating game. You're too young.
Oh, I did too.
But the dating game, that's the dating game music. Is it Herb Alpert? Probably. And I think they ought to just, someone out there with the skill set and the time should make a dating game meme with Sonny. Because that sweater, that was bad. But what was worse is what she said. You really have to lack any sense of perspective to say that January 6th is up there with World War II, with the Holocaust, and with slavery. The enslaved peoples would not appreciate that. I mean, I believe one of the rioters was killed and that nobody else died. There was a Capitol Hill policeman who died a couple of days later, but there has been no wrongful death suit connecting it up to the rioters yet, because I don't think you can do that. Scott Jennings, reliable Scott Jennings, lonely Scott Jennings over at CNN, did find time to comment on this, cut number 11.
That is so important in light of all the rhetoric and things we're going to hear people say today, is that ultimately it was the American people that got to decide ultimately how we feel collectively as a country about January the 6th. And already today, we have heard some people in other venues say extraordinarily unhinged and vile things, comparing January 6th to the Holocaust, to slavery, to World War II. I think we need to arrange our feelings and control ourselves accordingly here and not go off the deep end. It was not a good day. Political violence cannot be condoned, but we can also be measured in how we view it in light of the rest of American and world history. What's happening today is ultimately a good thing, because both parties, for the first time in my adult life, are accepting the results of an election. And that is ultimately putting this country on the right tracks. I just think people ought to really take stock of our feelings and not get out over our skis too much today and minimizing other world events and comparing them to January the 6th.
Good for Scott Jennings. Always helps to have a little perspective. You know, I began this job 8 years ago this month. I've been in radio since 1990 and television since 1992. And this is radio and television, and I've been doing it nonstop since. And I took over this time slot, 6 to 9 a.m. on the East Coast, 8 years ago in 2016, when my predecessor, Dr. Bill Bennett, retired. And I'll hand the baton over to Chris DeGaulle next week when I move to the afternoons and to noontime in the West. And I'm very happy about that move, and I'm very happy that Chris will be here to drive you to work in the morning. But I must say, I've heard a lot of stupid things in 25 years. I believe that Bill Bennett used to say routinely when we would go out on the road and do events together, Dr. Bennett would say that Americans have lost a sense of proportionality, that they no longer can assess the relative importance of an event like yesterday's earthquake in China, where thousands of people are dead, versus a snowstorm in the Beltway versus a dummy on The View. And they're not helped in this by public officials like Juan Merchan, the acting judge in New York, who is going to try and rush a sentence onto Trump so he can be a convicted felon, or Jack Smith is going to try and write another Mueller report idiocy instead of just closing up shop. And I do believe Bennett was right. Dr. Bill was usually right about the ability of American media to appropriately assess. Do you realize we had one of the largest terrorist attacks in American history last week in New Orleans? And 15 dead. I don't know if the death toll has gone up to 16 or 17, 30 injured. Could have been a lot worse. God bless the brave police officers of New Orleans who engaged the terrorists. But we had a terror attack that killed 15 people, innocent people, and wounded 30 a week ago, within the week. And Sonny Hostin goes on ABC News and says January 6th was worse than slavery and the Civil War, of course, and World War II and the Holocaust. It's so stupid as to almost defy explanation. But if you put it next to the events of last week, you begin to realize that January 6th, a bad riot, was nothing compared to the murder of 15 Americans by a terrorist in New Orleans, the injuring of 30 others. And you begin to wonder, do they have a death wish at Legacy Meeting? Does ABC want to bleed out